Americans have been on wheels for more than a century. That won't change anytime soon, but the way our cars work is about to get its biggest overhaul ever.
Connecting, the future of personal transportation. A look at the future of safer, cheaper, and greener transportation. Brought to you by the AutoBeat Group, publisher of online executive newsletters about the business of the global auto industry. Information available at autobeatgroup.com.
Hello, I'm Megan Sander, and thanks for joining me for Connecting, the future of personal transportation. In the next few years, cars will start talking to each other and the world around them. That will make them safer, and it will get us where we want to go quicker and more efficiently. Our cars will become much more convenient, too. Some can even park themselves already. Soon, they'll help you track down the lowest gas price, tell you about bad weather ahead, find and reserve you a parking spot, and much, much more. In a decade, many cars will be able to drive themselves, at least on the highway. Eventually, they'll be able to take you just about anywhere, automatically.
You know, in the late 1800s, Carl Benz drove the first gasoline-powered vehicle out of a barn. And what's interesting about that is the cars and trucks that most of us know today and use today have pretty much the same design makeup as the vehicle that Benz invented and Henry Ford popularized. It has a combustion engine. It uses oil as a source of energy. The controls are still predominantly mechanical or hydraulic. People operate them, they drive them themselves, and they kind of operate pretty much as a standalone machine and pretty much a general purpose machine. And that design has really served us well. It provides tremendous freedom to go where we want to, when we want to. It allows us to travel with the people we want to travel with, carry the things we want to carry. And in fact, it's been so popular that there's on the order of 1 billion cars and trucks on the planet today. Now, to put that in perspective, if you park those 1 billion cars end to end and wrap that traffic around the world, that go around 100 times. So that's a lot of cars and trucks. That's great, but the side effects of having all of those cars and trucks are serious, whether it's fatalities, over 1.2 million people a year die in the world on roadways, whether it's dependence on oil and the geopolitical aspects of that, whether it's air pollution or congestion or parking challenges or the equality of access, especially for people who don't have a car, we have some serious side effects.
Joining me to talk about the future of connected vehicles is Bill Hampton, owner and publisher of the AutoBeat Group and head of its Advanced Mobility Project, which tracks developments in this exciting new phase of personal transportation. Bill, thanks for joining us today.
Great to be here.
So in that clip, Professor Burns makes some good points about the basic idea of a car not changing much, but in reality, the car has definitely improved since Model T days, right?
Yes, we've come a long, long way from those days, and a lot of it really picked up in 1970 when the Clean Air Act was passed in the U.S. That got the auto industry thinking about emissions, and fuel economy came along a little later, and since that time cars have gotten about 95% cleaner than they were before then, and they're at least twice as fuel efficient. So a lot of improvement in those areas. They're certainly mechanically way more sophisticated than they were in the Model T days. A lot of electronics there taking care of things that were just impossible to handle mechanically. There's more convenient features in cars, things that we, I think, frankly, hadn't even thought about 10 years ago. So a lot of improvements over the last several years.
Definitely. So can we just keep making cars better and better? Well,
yeah, I think they will continue to improve. The problem we have now is a bigger one, and that's too much of a good thing. I mean, cars are terrific. People in developing countries who don't have a car yet still would like to have one, but it's very clear that as the population of the world increases, there's going to be a problem. Over the next 35 years, the forecast is we're going to gain more than 2 billion more people.
Wow.
That's another 2 billion people to move around. At the same time, the proportion of the world's population that lives in cities is going to go from about half now to 2/3. Now you put those numbers together, and what it spells is a gigantic traffic jam unless we figure out a much better way of moving ourselves around. Nobody wants to stop moving around, but we need to be more efficient about how that happens.
Exactly. The question of population growth and what that will mean for personal transportation was a big discussion point during the Advanced Mobility Project conference that took place in Detroit in February 2014.
We opened this morning with the idea of 9 billion people on the planet, all seeking mobility solutions. If we don't figure out how to reduce weight, reduce trips, reduce the cost of the assets necessary to transport us around because we've got higher capacity utilizations than we do today, we will not be able to provide sufficient mobility to the 9 billion people. The difference between a personal auto that I own and operate 4% of the time and a ride-share, car-share, or transit option that is maybe 70 to 90% utilized is huge in terms of the energy and scarce raw materials necessary to create the device in the first place. Those are really important drivers of sustainability. So it's not just the energy use of the finished product, it's how many finished products do we need in our lives to offer the level of mobility that we're seeking.
So Bill, the scenario that Jean describes, it almost sounds like we're going to have to give up our cars and just take the bus. Is this really where we're headed?
No, the good news is that that's not where we're headed.
Okay, good.
Particularly in the United States, I think cars will be around for a long, long time. Partly because we have a lot of wide open spaces. Now, if you go to a big city in the U.S., it's another story, and a lot of people who live in cities don't have cars because there's no place to put them.
Right.
And as we said earlier, as more people move into cities, this becomes a bigger and bigger problem. Car companies are aware of that. So are the people in the mobility space who study all of this. Now, they're not saying that there's one answer for everyone. Some places, yes, buses would make much more sense, but not everywhere. And part of the challenge for all of this is figuring out how to fit the right options to the situation. So what we're headed for is a lot more choice than you tend to see now, and a lot of that is driven by electronic devices that are coming into cars now.
Now, internationally, as you kind of mentioned, this idea of mass public transportation is not that big a deal, right? Because it's happening so much. But in the U.S., there's going to be some kickback, but there are options.
Well, yes, and you're very true. Overseas, and particularly in dense urban areas, a lot of this is old news in the sense that people already have a lot of options. There are trains, there are trams, there are bike sharing options and things like that. All very well established. They work well. And so people in those environments are very aware of the options. Here in the States, I think we certainly grew up in a car-centric world, and that's in many cases the only option we have at this point.
And there's some collaboration with others outside of the auto industry going on, yes?
Well, as this all starts to happen, you can see that the car companies themselves can't do everything. You start to involve government regulations, other providers of services, other types of transportation, and all these choices don't really work unless they connect with each other well.
Exactly. Well, the idea of having more choices about how to move ourselves is a key part of the transportation options we're likely to see in the near future. Here's what mobility expert Susan Zielinski has to say.
If the car is the main way of getting around and we don't have a car, then we don't have access to transportation. If we have access to a whole bunch of, if we live in a city, for example, that has, buses and trains and bicycles and bike share and car share and a whole range of new emerging technologies and even mobile phone applications that help connect those things, then we've got a great transportation system. If we don't have access to that, we're transportation disadvantaged. So that's why, right now it's a really exciting time because not only are more options being innovated, not only do we have more options like car share, bike share, much better automotive technology, much safer automotive technology, but we also have ways to put them together that make sense. If you have a bunch of options but they don't connect with each other, for example, if your train arrives at 3:02 and the bus that you needed to get off the train left at 3:01, that's not going to work. So putting it all together with the person who's using it in mind is what we need to be doing in transportation. That's beginning to happen.
So we now have an opportunity to not just rethink the fundamental design makeup of the vehicle, we have a chance to rethink mobility, something that's broader than transportation. Mobility is really that freedom to move around. And as we rethink that, what we're converging is connected vehicles, driverless vehicles, electrical vehicles, tailoring the designs of those vehicles, and new business approaches like shared vehicles that will allow us to perhaps not have nearly as many cars parked along the street. It is interesting, as consumers of cars, we don't think much about the fact that we buy a machine and then we let it stay parked 95% of the time. And now today we have a chance maybe to share those in a much more intelligent way. So we've entered into a point, I like to think in terms of the planets have become aligned now, a once-in-a-century opportunity to really rethink mobility and really preserve and enhance all those freedoms that we've grown to love about automobiles and eliminate those side effects.
The really exciting thing, and especially the really exciting thing here in the heart of the auto industry, is that this transformation is the foundation of an emerging new mobility industry that's going to provide, that's already starting to provide new jobs for startups, for new technologies, for new services, and also for industry in rethinking what they supply, much beyond what they supply right now. So it's helping not only folks like us get around from door to door and connect all our transportation modes, but it's really building an industry locally and helping our cities.
Transportation experts like these make a strong case for taking a fresh look at the best and most efficient ways for us to go where we want, when we want. But they also say it won't happen unless the vehicles that carry us around get connected with each other and with the world around them. This isn't a new idea, as Nick Pudar, who heads urban transportation work at General Motors, explained at the Advanced Mobility Project conference.
I was asked to answer this question of what is the connected vehicle and how is it going to change everything for us. And I know that in this kind of a setting, there are folks here who want to know what is the connected vehicle, and there's folks here who have actually pioneered the technology and what's made it possible. And what I want to focus on is this journey that the industry's been on. And GM's been part of this journey for quite some time. And our current strategy is really at an interesting pivot point in what is possible and what can be enabled. Actually, back in 1966, there were folks inside GM that were working on this question of how do I connect a vehicle to its environment so that it can actually provide important information to the driver to keep them safe. And there was this solution that was called the Driver Aid Information and Routing System. And the way this worked was that we would embed triplets of magnets in the roadway. And either the north or the south pole was pointing up. And therefore, you had 2 to the third 8 possible pieces of information. That's 1 byte of data. And depending upon what information you encoded in subsequent sequential bytes, you could actually store some information in that road about the road, such as what is the speed limit, what road am I on, and using the embedded data in the network of the roads, the vehicle, which had a magnetic pickup on the bumper, it could receive that information and interpret and provide you navigation services based on the actual road data. One of the things we learned was that it is interesting, but it's hard because of the significant infrastructure of embedding magnets in roadways. Then in 1987, again, with the desire to bring connectedness to the driver to provide better passenger communication outside the vehicle when they're in the vehicle, there was an exploration of using microwave towers to across the country, and we would build our own communication network with microwave towers. And the cost was pretty exorbitant, and so we didn't do that because we could not justify building out a communication network because we're a car company. And then in 1994, there was an internal project at GM called Project Beacon. And at the time, we had Hughes Electronics as part of the corporation, EDS, the automotive business. And we leveraged these assets, these unique strengths that the corporation had, to prove out quite successfully that there was a viable business model here, and we were going to leverage the cellular infrastructure that was emerging and becoming quite dominant in our environment to build this out. But we also discovered something else, that this kind of a heavy corporate governance structure was really hard, and that we needed to run it as a startup inside a big company, not 3 different companies trying to negotiate with each other. And from that, very quickly, we created the OnStar business. And so it launched in '96. And as you know, it's a service that uses cellular technology, GPS for location, data centers, call centers, some vehicle electronics, make it all stitched together and quite easily create this, this service that we provided for now 18 years. We've enhanced this, this service over the years, but one interesting thing to point out is at the beginning, when we were told, hey, this is all well-known technology and it's going to be no big deal to put it all together. Well, either we were being lied to or people just didn't know how hard it was going to be, because it was hard. It was hard to build it robustly, to make it work, and several 1,000 patent filings later and many that have been granted, we continue to file patents once every 5 days. There's still so much room to build this connectivity in a much more robust way.
So, Bill, why is the idea of a connected car really taking off now? What's significant about now?
Well, there are two big things. One is cost and the other is consumers. The cost issue, you've heard the discussion of the capabilities of something like an OnStar system. That means a lot of hardware that's in the car that wasn't there before.
Right.
If you're going to connect cars, now you need to put cameras in them and radar and other sensors and a computer to make it all work. Clearly that's a cost, and it's been kind of prohibitive. Even the test cars running around now are a little expensive for prime time, but they're getting there very quickly, and certainly if we start to incorporate the idea of connected cars into a wide number of them, then the volume of those components goes up, price comes down.
Right.
At the same time, you've got consumers who want to bring this kind of digital lifestyle into their car. They've gotten very used to smartphones, and we all are accustomed to being connected anywhere we want at any time, and we don't want that to go away when we move into the car.
Right. So connected cars obviously means lots of data floating around, right?
That is true. There's an enormous amount of information that's going to be generated if you have a lot of cars talking to each other all the time. It's kind of social media run amok.
How do they know, or how do we know, how does anyone know what data is important, what data isn't? Where does it all go and come from? Enlighten me here.
Well, there's a lot of development work going on that very thing, and here again is an area where car companies realize this is not what we do. Managing a giant network with a whole bunch of information flying around is something that other people need to do, and so there's a recognition that other industries that haven't been really part of the auto industry or transportation even are now starting to come into that space. And it's creating some interesting possibilities for partnerships, creating some cultural clashes as well.
Talk to me a little bit about that, cultural clashes.
Consumer electronics is a good example.
Okay.
I think you can see that a lot of the things that we see in smartphones, we want to move into cars now, and it's not as simple as just taking a car phone's innards and sticking it in a car, because the requirements performance-wise for a car are much tougher. The standards for cars are much, much higher, and a lot of the electronic folks out in Silicon Valley are realizing that this is not as easy as they thought it would be to accomplish all this. It can be done, but it's a lot of work and a lot of coming together with a common purpose.
So there could be some interesting collaborations in the future.
There has to be. I mean, this really can't work without it.
The auto industry is beginning to collaborate much more closely with the energy, communications, and consumer electronics industries, as Bill just told us, to name a few. But exactly how they'll all fit together in tomorrow's transportation system is not yet clear.
And you're definitely seeing this interdependency and cooperation to some extent between the industries. They have to cooperate and they have to work together. It's still a challenge. I think industries haven't quite learned or found, necessarily the best way to do that. They need to, the interdependency between energy and electronics and automotive and government and everything, they're all there, and they're all continuing to work together. I think if you look, though, at ecosystems, and this is where we're looking at in our next future study, if you look in terms of ecosystems, ecosystems traditionally have been built around products, and the OEMs, regardless of the industry, own that ecosystem. It's basically built on value that's up to the end product, and they pretty much tell the customers this is what you're going to have, you know, through doing, trying to give them what they want, but basically they're selling to segments. What we're seeing now with digital technologies and what people are asking for in mobility is that it doesn't necessarily fit easily in the electronics industry or the automotive industry or other industry. So this new ecosystem driven by the customer is going to change the way companies work together, but they still have to figure out how to fit in it.
Those silos are breaking down, especially with the connected car. You know, it's no longer building a great car and, you know, with the set of partners that they've had for many years. But now it's really connecting the car with the world and the environment around them. So it's a whole different set of partners that they need to reach out to. But they can't be, you know, domain experts in every area, from, you know, parking to restaurants and all these other entertainment services that they want to connect people to.
So we're seeing more partnering among car companies and companies in such fields as energy, consumer electronics, and communications. But what will using them to connect cars really do for us? Well, right now it's pretty much up to each of us as drivers to figure out what's going on around our cars. But we don't always notice everything we should. When you start equipping cars with cameras and radar and other kinds of sensors, you enable them to catch things we drivers might miss. And of course, electronic eyes don't get tired or distracted.
We now can begin to put sensors on vehicles, basically do what we do, see, collect that information, and be able to interpret all of that so intelligently that literally the car can drive itself. What are those sensors? You have lasers and radar and cameras pulling all that data in. You probably have heard of Google Maps. You probably have heard of maybe even Street View. But those mapping systems are huge databases that are tied to where you're located. You put all of that information together, we call that data fusion, and then the real question is, how fast can I turn these wheels and which direction should I be steering them? And lo and behold, the car is getting better and better at driving itself. So what's behind all of this is really this ability to collect and store and process much more data than we've ever been able to before.
So Bill, it's easy to see how adding cameras and radar to cars is going to help drivers be better drivers. But what is the benefit of connecting cars to each other?
Well, it's a little bit like social media and how we're all connected with each other, and as a result kind of know what's going on in a big cloud around us. If a car is equipped to be able to look around it on your behalf, that's great, but it still can only see as far as you could see if you were looking in that direction. In other words, it can't see around corners, it can't see over the hill, it doesn't know what's coming up a half a mile down the road. If you connect the cars to each other, now they can swap information. So that car that's a half a mile ahead of you, if it spots something in the road, if it encounters slower traffic suddenly or some emergency, that car would send a signal back to your car and let you know before you get there that something's coming up, it's time to get alert.
So there's a lot of safety benefits.
Very, very much so. And a lot of things come out of this once you start to connect cars. By this, what we're talking about is connecting cars within about a quarter mile of each other.
Okay.
I mean, you can see that I don't think my car needs to talk to your car if you're 30 miles away, but if you're in the vicinity and might impinge on what I'm doing or where I'm going, yes, that becomes important. Lots of examples, and one of the safety ones is the idea that you're approaching a green light and somebody coming on a cross street is clearly not going to stop in time and will run that light and could hit you. Well, if those cars are communicating with each other, your car would know that. It might alert you. It might even automatically stop on your behalf just to prevent an accident.
Interesting. Any other examples?
Yeah, I said before, cars out ahead could tell you in bad weather, for example, if a snowstorm is coming along and a squall just crossed the road. It could tell you ahead of time if there's an icy patch somewhere. Those are the kinds of extra capabilities that we're going to see fairly quickly as cars begin to get connected.
Exciting. Connecting cars so that they talk to each other isn't just a convenience, it's also a real lifesaver.
The fact is, people aren't very good at driving. Even though we've improved, people get distracted. In fact, some people have concluded that driving is the distraction. Why else would someone possibly send a text in a vehicle going 70 miles an hour that weighs 4,000 pounds rather than driving it safely if they didn't think that text was more important than driving. And I don't mean to be flippant here, but people tend not to be able to concentrate all the time. And what we're seeing is in many circumstances, the technology can see all around. It can process things much more quickly. It's there all the time and it doesn't get distracted. So we have a chance to be much safer. In fact, the experts on safety, traffic safety, suggest when we put all this together, connected and autonomous or self-driven vehicles, put that all together, we can probably take the fatalities down by about 90%. Now today in the United States, about 33,000 people a year die on roadways. Take that down by 90%, you save 30,000 lives. And if you can get to this possible future a year sooner, that's 30,000 people. If you can get there one day sooner, that's 82 lives. So that's why this is not just an opportunity to give us more freedom, it's an opportunity to really take us to the whole next plateau of safety.
Those are very compelling numbers, but the whole idea of the connected and eventually self-driving car also raises big questions about what role the auto industry will play in this new world of connectivity. It's a question that the state of Michigan, home of the American auto industry, is thinking about right now. Here's Nigel Francis, top automotive advisor to Governor Rick Snyder.
Yes, there is a future, a very strong future for the automobile, and I think that we're going to see a difference in the realization of what constitutes an automobile over that we see today. So there's going to be a very strong paradigm shift in personal mobility going forward. I think that there will be a shift in emphasis from safety-related connectivity, automation, autonomy solutions to solutions that are using the same forms of technique but are producing very high degrees of personalization of the vehicle, whatever the vehicle is, so that the vehicle fits with the needs and wants of the individual or individuals that are traveling in it.
Mobility is a new horse, right? It's a new way to think about transportation. It's extremely complex because a lot of stakeholders are involved. And it's also complex in the sense that it's not exactly clear who will own certain roles that are critical. I keep saying that mobility is not a technology question. You need to integrate into the existing business models in a way that will not change or disrupt some of the players that are established there, such as, for instance, the car makers, right? You can't ask them to stop selling cars or make money only on simply the potential of having access to a vehicle.
The challenge for the auto industry right now is that its mainstream business is so large and so robust and so ingrained that making a fundamental shift to a different revenue model, a different cost model, and a different skill set to serve a mobility customer who probably won't own a product but is looking for access to a device to get them from one place to another creates a whole different paradigm. My view is that the value proposition in this model shifts from the vehicle to the data. And what I mean by that is it's the integration and the access of data from the mobility customer, the mobility fleet device operator, and this vast network of infrastructure, sewing that all together. But the solution is getting the data knitted together and providing a pleasurable experience to an individual or a group of individuals who want to move somewhere. That's the big challenge. So when you think about that, the stakeholder universe is expanding, the value proposition is changing, the roles and responsibilities of this network change, the partnerships that are required could be extremely different from the partnerships that exist today in the auto industry. So that creates opportunity and it creates threat. So it's really up to the auto industry to see the future.
These experts are talking about a very exciting future for the auto industry, but it is still a little bit difficult to see what's ahead.
Well, it is because it's all lying in front of us. There are many exciting things to happen. It's a little like smartphones. If you can imagine 7 years ago when Apple introduced the first iPhone, it seems like yesterday, and now we can't live without our smartphones. But at the time when that phone was introduced, and a lot of people said, well, what am I going to do? What do I need a smartphone?
I was one of those people.
Well, so was I. What am I going to do with a smartphone? You use a phone to call, don't you? Why do you want your computer access to be on that thing too? And yet, fast forward to today, there are literally millions and millions of apps that have been written for that capability, and we're scooping them up like crazy.
Good point.
And people are writing new ones every day.
So what does that mean for the car?
Well, if you move all that into a car, a couple of things. As we just heard, a big moment for the auto industry to figure out what it's going to do with its own vehicles. Does it turn them into smartphones, in effect making them receptive to all sorts of apps that somebody outside writes and wants to have you bring into your car? Who controls all that when that happens, particularly if something goes wrong? That's a dicey question. And again, it's one that involves forming new partnerships between the car companies themselves, trying to figure out what the role of that car is with the providers of these services and other applications.
So I love examples. So tell us, what are some examples of these apps for cars that we might be able to expect in the near future? Well,
you might have one that automatically turns on your air conditioning or your heating at home when you're a certain number of miles away from home. That's a little more sophisticated than a thermostat that just says, I'm going to turn on at 5:30 because I think that's when you're going to be there. This is connecting in real time with where you actually are. Okay. Let's say you're driving along and you're getting a little low on gas. Your car would recognize that. It would do more than just tell you you're low on gas. It would say, you know, I noticed that you tend to go to this certain type of service station, a certain brand you prefer. There's 1/2 mile up on the left. If you stop in there right now and fill up, you will get a discount from that particular station. All that coordinated electronically. These kinds of things are very real, and there are people right now developing just those kinds of apps.
One big force pushing the idea of connected cars is safety, but it isn't the only driver. Another factor is our growing digital lifestyle. We're getting used to being connected all the time and everywhere, and we want our cars to be a part of that experience too.
When we, in IBM, we've been spending a lot of time lately looking at really this consumer side of the equation. So, and especially how is the consumer life changing? And key to that is the use of digital technologies and how they've really changed the way that the consumers engage with the vehicle and others. And especially when you think about digital technologies like sensors, you can collect data from just about anything anymore. You can turn that data into information using analytics. Mobile devices, when I look around the world, in China, there's over 700 million people that have a mobile device now, so, which is more than twice the population of the US. So everybody is connected through their mobile devices. And then when you can take that information and give that to the consumer, and it's information about using the vehicle, and there's cases on whether you own it or not, but it's really how do you use a vehicle to move from one point to another, and then how do you integrate different modes of transportation in that movement. And the key thing that we are finding now, another component that's changing the game, is that people want personalization. They want all of this information, they want all of these options, they want all of these ways to move around in a way that supports their personal lifestyle.
So what we're seeking for in things like the connected car is the ability to use applications or maybe utilize your devices on a variety of different vehicles. So the collective body of all of the vehicles on the road represent a market that new players can come in and sell software and hardware. The car companies aren't really that excited about commoditizing their whole industry, so we have to be very sensitive to that need. It's very important, given the safety requirements, the quality requirements of the automotive industry, to make sure that we recognize that there's unique things about the auto industry that are not present in consumer electronics.
Bill, all this talk about hardware, software, features, all of this data coming in and going out, isn't it just going to take driver distraction to a whole new level?
Well, it certainly could do that, and that's a very, very big concern here. We're all grappling already with the distraction that happens when you bring your smartphone into the car. If the car itself is now doing the same sort of thing and offering you very entertaining apps, you get to a point where you wonder, well, is there any time left over to drive the vehicle itself? Very big concern. The industry is trying to adopt some voluntary standards about this, working with the U.S. government on it, but they tend to be around things like whatever it is the car wants you to do instead of driving, make sure that you don't spend more than about 3 seconds looking somewhere else other than down the road. Is that going to carry the day as more and more of these apps become available? Probably not. We're going to have to figure out better ways of integrating all this stuff. Very big issue for people developing these features now.
Yeah, it really is. And I've heard it said, you know, people are going to use their smartphones in the car. They are going to do it. So is it better for them to be using this small device or have the conventions in the car that will let them do similar types of things and keep their mind on the road, hands on the wheel, eyes on the drive, you know, that old adage?
Well, that's a very good point, and you can see that in spite of all the laws that have sprung up about not allowing texting or even talking on a cell phone in a car, we all do it anyway. You're absolutely right. Getting people to stop this is probably not possible. So that means now it's back on the backs of the developers of these apps and the car companies themselves. Of how do you integrate this and make it more smooth? It's new territory for developers. They can't really go to a textbook and look up how to do this. They're kind of figuring this out as they go, but there's a tremendous pressure to figure it out soon.
Because consumers want it.
Well, they do.
Yeah.
And I mean, some people say ultimately the cure for this or the solution may be the self-driving car.
Because the self-driving car can just take over for you?
Well, that's it, exactly. If the car is driving itself and you don't have to, now you're kind of excused from paying attention, at least for long periods of time, and you can let your car actually do everything for you. Now, we have a ways to go before cars can actually do that kind of driving under all circumstances. Because
there are some out there that are driving autonomously at this point, but you're saying that we're not there yet. How? When? When do you think that might happen?
Well, we're starting with the easy stuff, which is kind of either low-speed stop-and-go traffic. If I was in a car in a traffic jam and the car could just follow the guy in front of me, slow up, speed up, change pace to track that car in front of me without me having to pay attention to all that, that would be great. And there are cars equipped now that can do that. Then you start to move to higher speeds, and there's one model at least out there that can do this at highway speeds. It's interesting that it can drive itself in the sense of staying in its lane and slowing down when it needs to and that sort of thing. But because of regulations at the moment, the driver has to touch the wheel every few seconds to kind of check in, if you will. So it's not really the kind of self-driving, jump in your car and say, take me to the theater.
Where you sit back and just work on your smartphone or your tablet or whatever.
To accomplish that requires a lot more sophisticated understanding on the car's behalf of what's going on around it. It's one thing to sense a lot of things going on, but if you're going to let the car drive itself, it has to be correct all the time, not just most of the time, because you're putting your life in the hands of that technology.
Absolutely. And it's also incredibly costly, that technology.
It's very expensive now. I think we've all seen those Google cars running around, and they're probably the most obvious example of a car that comes pretty darn close to being able to drive around. Those cars can get through cities and look out for pedestrians and left turn situations, things like that, quite well. But even Google says we have a long way to go. They're just about to start a new test with some new vehicles to try and push this to the next level. Clearly, you can't let people just get in cars that are driving themselves if the car can't figure out what to do sometimes.
Right. It's hard to imagine what a world full of self-driving cars would be like, but researchers like Larry Burns have an idea.
The work I've done at University of Michigan and at Columbia University suggests we can do all of this, and it'll be significantly less costly than owning and operating your own car. You don't have to hassle with parking. The idea here is that you'll simply request a ride with your handheld device, let's say an iPhone. The vehicle will show up in a couple of minutes, take you to where you want to go driverlessly, drop you off, and then be reassigned to pick somebody else up a couple blocks away to take them to where they want to go. You do that over and over again. We've studied Ann Arbor quite carefully on this regard, and we can reduce the number of vehicles in Ann Arbor by about 85% and pick everybody up requesting a ride in about 2 minutes, and they can request them not scheduled, spontaneously, and really the repositioning of the vehicle when it's empty is only about 3% of the miles driven. So this is a very exciting kind of way to get around where you don't have to hassle with parking. You can use your time exactly as you like. It's less costly. And when we design the vehicle for the typical trip, it's far more energy efficient.
Okay, so the professor in that clip just said that self-driving cars will end up being less expensive than owning and operating your own car. But how is that possible?
That may be the most exciting thing of all for us people who buy cars down the road. Certainly when you start to do this, you're putting more hardware in the car. You've got to put all those computers and sensors and radars and stuff like that. An expensive proposition no matter what. But over time, if you get to a point where you can have truly self-driving cars, the ones that you literally get in the car at your home and say, take me somewhere, and it just does that, drops you off and goes and parks itself, that would be nice too. That's all possible down the road. When you get to that point, now you go back to the car itself and you start to say, well, why do I need a steering wheel? I'm not steering the car's steering itself. Do I need an accelerator pedal and a brake pedal? No. And so a lot of stuff starts to come out of the car. Do you still need 9 airbags because you need them because you're liable to crash into something? Probably not if those cars are looking out for each other and avoiding each other at all costs. Now you have a vehicle that's got less content in it. It's still safe because of the connectivity and the ability of the cars to sense what's going on around them. But the car can get lighter, more fuel efficient. You're using fewer materials. So the price of creating that vehicle, or that pod, if you will, starts to come down. So at the end of the day, yeah, the car could be costing less than they do today.
Interesting. You use the word pod because as you're speaking, I'm picturing this reimagined vehicle. Basically, you're connecting cars and you're basically changing what a car looks like and is.
Well, that's true, and not everybody's happy about that. People who do enjoy the experience of driving would say, well, when we get to that point, how do I actually drive a car? If it doesn't even have a steering wheel, there's not an option of saying I'm going to turn off the automatic feature because right now I'm on a nice country road and I'd like to enjoy the experience of driving that. If we get to a kind of extreme stage, and that's kind of where Google is pushing it now with this next round of testing. Those are cars that literally don't have a steering wheel. I'm not sure when we'll get to that point. It'll be a while. This is not going to happen tomorrow.
Right, exactly. So getting to a world of self-driving cars will take time. Working out the details of car connectivity is complicated because it involves car companies, but it's also part government, service providers, and regulators. There are also questions about privacy. Who owns all that data cars are swapping with each other? Then there are questions about liability. Who is at fault if your connected car gives you bad advice? What if your self-driving car makes a mistake? Right now, there are more questions than answers on these points.
We have a vision in terms of where we see the world going from vehicles that communicate to vehicles that cooperate to eventually to some point in time when they can travel autonomously along the roads, or at least in some levels of driverless fashion. If an automaker puts a system in and it doesn't work, in the past the automaker's been liable. But if now he's communicating to a second or third party or getting information from the infrastructure that may be wrong or may be late in being received, where is the liability there? And that's very important in the United States. Another question is in terms of the security. We've created several gateways into the vehicle. Can be through satellite communication, through cellular, through wireless, and through the dedicated short-range communication, the spectrum that was allocated for safety message sets by the federal government. So now that you have these gateways in the car, and there's been a number of experiments to see if people could insinuate bad code to corrupt the systems, to cause it to send information to other systems, they're discovering that they have to work to protect those gateways, to figure out how to encapsulate the information that's sent, not just because we're afraid that somebody's going to do something maliciously, but if you look at the complexity of 42 networks and 150 sensors and multiple processors inside your car, not everyone knows what everyone's doing in terms of what they're coding and what they're using. And so there could be that multiple apps impact one upon the other. And it's different than your phone, because if an app doesn't work on your phone, you delete it or you re-download it. Now it's back to liability. If an automaker's put an app into a car, or you've got one on an aftermarket device, who do I call if that app doesn't work, or if it's not from, do I go to my dealer? Is he going to have the resource to do that? So they're looking at addressing those issues. When you look at a car will generate over an exabyte of data a year. That's 1 billion gigabytes. Most of that, almost all of it, is used to power the car, to tell it how to turn, how to brake, how to change channels on the radio. There's very little of that information that's actually personally attributable to the people in the cars. So when we narrow that scope down and say that it's not diagnostic data we're talking about, it's not vehicle performance or engine management or environmental controls, but my origin, my destination, my driver behavior, the question is that, do I have the right to have that data? Does someone else have the right to have that data? The reality is that it's probably going to be defined by each automaker.
Scott McCormick raises important questions. One way to get answers is to test connected cars in the real world and see what happens. That is exactly what the U.S. Department of Transportation, the University of Michigan, and several other partners have been doing in Ann Arbor. Joining us now is Peter Sweatman, who headed that project as director of the University of Michigan's Transportation Research Institute. Peter, thanks for being with us today.
Pleasure. Thank you, Megan.
So tell us about this connected car test.
Well, we were very fortunate to be in a position to do the biggest test that's been ever conducted in the world on connected vehicles, what we call V2V and V2I. So the US DOT entrusted us to use the city of Ann Arbor as a model deployment area, and we actually went out and deployed over 2,800 connected vehicles, and they've been running in Ann Arbor. They're still running. They've been running for 2 years now. We deployed them on the 21st of August, 2012 at 1 p.m. in the afternoon. I say that because everything ran to clockwork, as you can tell. So we started at 1 o'clock on that day, and we've been running now for a little over 2 years. So we're thrilled that we had that opportunity, and it's been very successful.
So what have you learned?
We learned that it works. We learned
That's good.
We learned that
that's a great start.
The transmitting of basic safety messages between vehicles in the immediate vicinity, and also bringing in the infrastructure, particularly at intersections and so on, has the potential to save nearly 80% of the fatalities and serious injuries that we see in this country. So, of course, we're working closely with the US Department of Transportation, and they've made their own conclusions based on the data that this is one of the more significant safety innovations that we could expect to see in our lifetime. So the potential to save that many lives and injuries through this very robust form of communication between vehicles, so that if you imagine when you're driving, the driver is constantly maintaining what we call situation awareness of all the vehicles around, all the potential threats, the other objects out on the highway. So imagine if your vehicle can kind of do that for you. So with the vehicles in the immediate vicinity indicating where they are, what speed they're going, exactly where they are, what direction they're heading in, then your vehicle can continuously scan to see where risks might be arising. And at this point, we're using that information, we have for 2 years now, to be giving drivers warnings about potential risks arising. But we can we can go a lot beyond that in the future and actually have some interventions automated into the vehicles.
Now, this is a big deal to prove that this system really works from the government standpoint, because it's trying to figure out, do we pass legislation, do we require cars to be able to do this, or do we not? What's our role in all this? So that the results here are very important for that.
So the critical requirement from our point of view was to produce the quality data. That data was independently analysed and assessed by the US Department of Transportation, and at least partly on the basis of that, they've made some announcements relating to rulemaking for this V2V technology in the future. So, in fact, there was an advance notice of proposed rulemaking was issued, along with a research report based on our data, where it was concluded that this is a very significant safety innovation that we need to roll out as fast as we possibly can. One of the challenges with connected vehicles is the level of benefit depends a lot on the density of deployment. So currently in Ann Arbor we have about at any given time, about 5% of the vehicles in the traffic stream are actually equipped. That's our 3,000 odd vehicles. But as we build up the deployment to what we call a massive deployment, where we have a very high percentage of equipped vehicles in the traffic stream, then the benefits just exponentially increase as we go forward. So a lot of our focus now is, having established that this technology works very effectively, how do we get it deployed rapidly and build the density up out on the road?
And one of the big key results of all of this is the fundamental fact that if you're going to connect cars of different brands and different makes and different years all have to be able to talk to each other. It's not just getting the GM cars to talk to each other or all the Ferraris, but everybody has to be able to talk to each other and compare the same notes and understand each other clearly. So that's a big chore.
Absolutely, Bill. And from the automaker's point of view, they need to be able to rely on those signals coming from all those other makes of vehicles. So the ability to get to that, that's where the rulemaking really comes in, to make sure that we have a sufficient standardization and understanding of the platform so that everyone can act upon it. Yeah, we're very aware at the moment of the many electronic systems, computerized systems being introduced inside a vehicle, many systems through the data bus in the vehicle, lots of sensors, lots of systems being connected. In fact, when we do our research, we typically collect about 600 types of information that are just coming from in the vehicle. So if you imagine you can expand that to the vehicles immediately around you with a very robust form of wireless communication that's almost as if those other sensors and those other vehicles were in your vehicle. So we're really expanding the vehicle's network outside the vehicle for the first time, but in a very robust and reliable way, and that's why it needs this rulemaking.
Well, where do you go from here? I mean, this is obviously a very beneficial test, but now what happens?
Right.
So we've taken the challenge at the University of Michigan, and not only the University of Michigan, but our partners, the Michigan Department of Transportation, are leaders in this field, the Michigan Economic Development Corporation. So we've received a lot of support, and we've put together a new centre, the Michigan Mobility Transformation Centre, MTC, which is all about connected and automated mobility for the future, and how we can do larger and larger deployments, because this is how we understand how the system of the future is going to work. So, as I've already indicated, we're going outside the vehicle to vehicles in the vicinity. We can also connect to intersections and so on. We can connect on a bigger scale. But in doing that, we need to understand how the users are reacting to this. What does it really mean? And eventually, well, we're going to see increasing automation as we go forward, eventually to driverless vehicles. And I think many people see a tipping point. They see that this is a transformation, whether they call it connected vehicles or whether they call it autonomous vehicles or automated vehicles. I think they're all thinking about something similar. They're all excited about something similar, and that is that we can not only have a new level of safety that we could never have before, but we can dramatically improve traffic efficiency, we can reduce energy consumption, and all the while we're creating jobs and entrepreneurial opportunities around this transportation system space because for one thing, all the data that's going to be generated is going to create many, many opportunities for new businesses to arise, and that's just one example.
Well, great. Thank you so much, both of you, for being with us today. Appreciate your input. We have a lot to look forward to, don't we?
Certainly do. Thank you, Megan.
The connected car is real, and it's coming our way now with real benefits for everyone. Better highway safety will be the biggest advantage. Besides saving lives and reducing injuries, connectivity will enable us to avoid the inconvenience and cost of all those fender benders that didn't happen. Perhaps the biggest change will be the personal conveniences possible when cars connect. We can only begin to imagine what those will be. I'm Megan Sander for the Advanced Mobility Project. Thanks for joining us for Connecting the Future of Personal Transportation. Take care.